Good evening, everyone. I am Dani Nicole, and I am the host of the Book Talk Author Visibility Podcast. And on this evening, I have the pleasure of speaking with another author. His name is Anthony Scott. So, without further ado, I'm going to let Anthony introduce himself, tell us where he's from, and he will tell us the book or books he would like to discuss tonight.
Good evening, everyone. Well, it might be morning when you watch this, so wherever you watch it, good. Hey, y'all. So this is Anthony Scott. I am an attorney, author, public speaker, U.S. Marine Corps veteran out of Cleveland, Ohio, which is where I am now. But I also write under a separate name too, so I'll share both. But there's three books. Any of them are fair game for this conversation. I told my friend Dani Nicole, just get me. I can handle the stumpers. So the first book is Unlocking Potential, Insights, Tips, and Strategies for Young Black Professionals. My second book is Overcoming Impostor Syndrome, You Belong at the Table. And those were written under my government name of Anthony W. Scott, Esquire. And then my most recent venture is it's important to me to be authentic and to have fun with my writing. So I just released a novella called Yes, Mrs. Smith, which is book one in the More Money Than Time series. And that one is under the name just T. Scott. And that one is erotic fiction. Yeah. So that is me and all my split personalities.
All right. So, what inspired you to write each one of your books?
To appreciate it's kind of a chronology, right? When I first started writing, it was back in 2014. It was the first time I put pen to a keyboard. Now, my undergrad is in English, and I used to write short stories, do speech and debate, things like that. And as an attorney, have to write all the time, all day, every day. But as far as writing for it to be an actual published work, 2014, started working on a book that had a lot of autobiographical components that I just didn't have the emotional intelligence to navigate. It kept kind of triggering my mental health. It's a whole nother conversation. And that book was called Raising Jeremiah. And once I realized I didn't have the capacity, then I kind of shelved that. It's still shelved. That'll be a 2027 or a 2028 release. But anyway, so then I started thinking, well, what can it was cathartic at that point, right? I was enjoying the writing process. It was helpful. And so I started thinking, what can I write about? So I'm big on mentoring. I just did a speech on mentoring last weekend at a local church. I'm the chair of the Norman S. Minor Bar Association's mentoring group. So we pair students and attorneys, all students and attorneys together. Mentoring is huge to me. So I started writing a book from a standpoint of what can I pour back? If you know anything about the D9 or the Greek world, I'm a Q. Are you? So have to I spend a lot of time with my younger brothers, kind of pouring into them as a mentor, as a big brother, as a friend. And so that's when I started writing Unlocking Potential. And like many authors, I went in, out, picked up the pen, picked up the keyboard, didn't do anything with it. And then fast forward around 2020, I'm working on it as a guy for some clarity. Like, how do I do this? I'm trying to make it make sense in a certain way that's just not working for me. And then ultimately, I was able to receive the gift of discernment. He was like, just do it alphabetical. So if you go to that first book, actually, wait a minute, it's over here, shameless plug. So this is the book that I'm referring to that ultimately became Unlocking Potential. And this is the companion workbook. So in that space, eventually I realized just approach it, alphabetically. So it covers things like appearance, authenticity, career, and emotional intelligence, so forth and down the line. And in writing that, imposter syndrome was one of the chapters, which I came to realize that is just so pervasive. Like about 70% of us suffer from imposter syndrome, where we question, do we actually have the skills to do what we're trying to do? Will someone realize that we're a fake, we're an imposter, regardless of what your resume says, right? And so that was the second book, Overcoming Imposter Syndrome. Both books actually released last year in 2025. And this book really is intimate and personal because the first chapter, I go into my story. You know, if somebody looks on paper, they might think my life is gravy, but that's not the reality at all. I mean, it's good now. I'm blessed and highly favored. but that wasn't the way it was coming up, right? And so that became the impetus of that book. And it's cool to be that person, but I've not always been that person. I've not always been polished. I'm first generation college. At one point, when I went to the military, I just figured that'd be the rest of my career. I didn't have the capacity, I didn't have the intellectual capacity to go to school. And I enjoyed my experience in the military. But then at the same time, I was a young dad. I started taking classes to be eligible for promotion, make more money, take care of the household. And so that's how I started getting more into the academic space, but it still didn't always resonate. Even now, humbly speaking, great resume, work as a director for county government in my 9 to 5. Again, I'm blessed and highly favored, but there's still that other dude. There's still that other part that just wants to write whatever they want to write. And so that's how I got into the space of just going with urban fiction, erotica. I'm working on another series. I'm actually working on 3 series within the same universe. So there's The More Money Than Time. There's The Vault, which is a erotic horror book. It's based off of an adult lifestyle club, a sex club that's actually paranormal. And so that's the one I was working on first. And Yes, Mrs. Smith is born from out of that. And then there's another series that actually this is the first time I probably talked about that series first, and that's called Boundaries. And Boundaries will come out in 2027. And there's characters in Boundaries that you'll first meet in the vault here in 2026. So I'm having fun with it. There is one more nonfiction book that I'll write, at least one more, and that's about 60 to 75% done. And that's called Fitting 25 into 24: Time, Energy, and Boundary Management for High Achievers. So after that, I might kill off that persona and everything may just be dark, urban fiction, erotica, paranormal. Just have fun because I'm so serious in my 9 to 5. So
That's
long
great.
answer. Sorry.
No,
I just covered 11.
that's all right. That's what we're here for, and that sounds great. So, what was the hardest part of writing or releasing all books? One book. What does that look like?
Marketing is hard. Anybody that's on here that is an independent author, yourself as well, just marketing, right? Getting out there, trying to get people to care about your work when there's
Yes.
gazillions of other things out there. That part is hard. And like we were talking about offline, with this Yes, Mrs. Smith, I've had a couple of reviews that, if I'm being honest, were kind of suspect. And I'm asking people, like, help me understand what prompted you to read it, to see it that way, and to read it and review it that way. And thankfully it's only been like 1 or 2, but still it's like, help me understand so I can be better at my craft. And so you got to have thick skin in this business to want to put yourself out, have the audacity to think that you have something to say. And so that part, humility is not a challenge for me, but the Virgo in me, the intellectual, the curious, wants to ask the why. And nobody has to give you a why, right? I didn't buy your book. I didn't like your book. What is it? I put you on DNF, do not finish. Everybody, what I write is not going to be for everybody, and I understand that. But the inquisitive part of me does want to dig in. So again, the marketing and just wanting to get to the why, so that way I can be better and make my art more accessible, more attractive, but without compromising myself.
Yes, I agree with you on that. Like you said, your each book isn't for everybody, and I think it's just even trying to figure that out, because I know when I released my first novel in 2024, it's a fiction romantic drama, but you're right, it's just everything isn't for everybody, and I wanted everybody
Yeah.
to like it, but it's not that way. There's a different audience for
Yeah,
every.
you like, come on, Oprah, Obama, both of y'all. You anybody, Rush Limbaugh. I don't even like you, but I want you to read my
Yes,
book. And so right, but it isn't for every audience. Yeah.
absolutely. So, did you self-publish or have you done traditional publishing?
I've done self-publishing. I started in the same quandary like a lot of people do, wanting to really thinking about it. And I thought about the traditional publishing. I had conversations with publishers as well as hybrid publishers, as well as friends that were in the publishing space, frat brothers who were in there. And I felt like what I was going to do was come out with self-publishing so that that way I understood the mechanics again between being and I try not to ascribe to astrology too much, but I do know there's a science to it, not a religion, but there's a science to it. And I know one of the traits for me as a Virgo and as an attorney and kind of a type A is I want to know how things work, right? I want to understand the mechanics. And so for that reason, I jumped out there in the independent publishing space, have done all three of my works as well as an upcoming audiobook that I'm working on. I'll go through all of those platforms, but each one is a different learning lesson. Like with Yes, Mrs. Smith, I didn't just go with Amazon and Ingram. I went with Apple. I went with Google. I went with Kobo. And that spreading myself that wide actually has had an unintended consequence that it made some of the technological things that you do more challenging and more complicated. You know, it's getting co-mingled together, sorry, and your pricing isn't coming up, or there's different ASINs that keep showing up, all of those different things. And so it's a journey, but I actually still prefer it this way because I feel like this gives me a platform to help people. And at one point, it may also be something that I monetize. But at least for right now, I talk to people, I build community, and we're just sharing together. And so I love that I'm able to give some perspective that may be able to help people. And again, more control over my own product without having to compromise, except to the extent I compromise with with the fans, with the beta readers share, the ARC readers, and you want to be more appealable. But other than that, I get to control my art.
Okay, absolutely. So, what's one thing you would hope the readers or the authors understand about the books you've written?
You know what? Authenticity. I want it all to come down to authenticity. I've been extremely fortunate that my life turned out the way it has, at least thus far, because that's not what I thought was in the cards for me. And because of that, I've been able to experience a lot of things. And those are things that help me have the focus, the discipline, the drive, the empathy, the audacity to try to write. And in doing all that, it's important for me to do it from an authentic place, which is why I wanted to embrace a secondary genre because that's a part of me. That's a part of me, that creativity, that guy who the young me was a very sexual person, very kind of out there, but was also very creative, very much an artist, right? And there's a lot of people, if we're being honest, that don't gravitate towards the nonfiction works. They just want the fiction works because they want the escape. I get it. So let me experience that as a writer also, right? Let me lean into the authentic. Let me have a little fun. Let me be a little dark, write some outlandish stuff that is like, he wrote that? Like, yeah, that guy wrote that. Let me have that fun as well because it allows me to release that part of me, which all boils down to authenticity. Fathers, grandfathers, directors, husbands still got that young 20, 21, 22-year-old that was wild and crazy and had all these far-fetched thoughts. So let me live in that authentic space where I get to purge that. I get to use it as catharsis and then get to engage in the author community that enjoys that, as well as those that may write more serious work from a nonfiction standpoint, a biographical or a true, more canonical romance versus when we go into our dark romance or our spicy romance.
Yes, absolutely. I appreciate that. That sounds good. I'm enjoying, you share about that at this moment because I mean, I felt the same way. Like my first book is fiction because I was scared to be vulnerable until I did the anthology for moms.
Mm-hmm.
That is when I really had to be my true authentic self,
Yeah.
and I couldn't hide behind the character and make up stuff. The fiction and the nonfiction were different, and I think the nonfiction was actually harder because I had to be vulnerable than versus the non versus the fiction. So I get that. I understand that completely.
My journey actually is the opposite, and maybe it's just when I wrote it, and I'm not going to ask questions about age or make anything presumptive about that. but I presume I've had a couple of years, one or two more than you at least. So I had, and I believe in therapy, right? Part of what I write about in both books, Unlocking Potential and Impostor Syndrome, is talking about navigating mental health. And so I come from a family that genetically passed down some mental health challenges by virtue of my upbringing, by virtue of my military career during wartime. You pick up other challenges and you learn to navigate it. So, from that space, spiritually, from a therapeutic standpoint, I've had to be more vulnerable. So, that allowed me to come out there in the nonfiction space. That was easier for me than the fiction. The fiction, I gotta balance how, what do I say? How can I present myself? I was challenged for a few years thinking about this. Like, can I even put it out there? I told you it started from that place, right? I couldn't even go into what I was writing. I was afraid of the pain. I was afraid of the fears and tears, actually. So now I can tackle them. Even in the first chapter of Imposter Syndrome, I put my life out there and some of the things that I navigated, because before I can talk to anybody else, if you're looking at my resume or my LinkedIn, you're like, what's this dude talking about? But if you go a little bit deeper, you read that chapter. I'm sorry, my contact is bothering me so much for some reason. If you go into those other spaces, you look on the social media, you hear me at one of my speeches or on YouTube, you see the vulnerability. And so I learned to lean into it. And again, going back to the last question, that's that authenticity. Can I conjugate a verb? Sure. Can I write a lengthy brief or essay? Sure. But then, is that authentic? Is that coming from here? Or is that just me writing to the profession or the job or the task? And so leaning into that vulnerability has been more fun. I'd like to keep writing in both genres because I do love the mentorship, the leadership, the guidance that comes from it. I'm working on a curriculum now for Imposter Syndrome that people would be able to download or utilize. But I love just being able to put on, wait a minute, this is normally my writing hat. When I'm sitting down here, I put on my baseball cap, just get to writing. Sometimes turn it backwards, and that signifies I'm really serious, So I enjoy being in that space to be whichever version of me is going to get behind that keyboard. But the fiction has been more fun because I could be more audacious.
Okay. So, Anthony, tell us tell the listeners where they can connect with you and where they can support your work.
So, perfect. So, like many of us, I've developed a link tree that has everything. So hopefully we can share it here or somewhere.
Share it in the audio.
Perfect.
Of the
Perfect. But then also on top of that is my website, which is www.isipublishingllc.com, or you can find me on easiest as TikTok and Instagram at author.tony.scott.esq. Now, this is the play on words as me as a member of Omega Psi Phi. The ESQ is ESQU. So okay. Again, author.tony.
Okay. The listeners, please follow me, like, share, and comment. Anthony, thank you so much for your time. It's been a pleasure working with you.
The pleasure was mine, Dani. I want to thank you for having me on here. Y'all, like she said, make sure, like, subscribe, share, engage. Help this platform grow. Y'all just don't know how hard Dani works behind the scenes. I'm going to tell y'all. She works hard. So let's build this voice. Let's build this platform up. We will be accountability partners.
Yes, I like that. Well, thank you so much again, and you enjoy your night.
Thank you. You too.